Welcome to this crucial executive briefing. Listen, if your company operates anywhere in the European market, the ground beneath your feet has just completely shifted. The era of traditional green marketing, where sustainability was just a voluntary PR exercise, yeah, that is officially dead. Today, we're unpacking the EU's new Empowering Consumers Directive, or EmpCo, and this directive literally turns those marketing claims into binding legal liabilities. Let's get right into it. I want to start right here with this number, because it represents an existential business threat. 4%. That is 4% of your company's annual turnover in the affected member states. That's the maximum penalty your organization could face for non-compliance under this new directive. So we're not just talking about a little slap on the wrist for a misleading ad anymore, right? This is a massive, structural regulatory risk, and it demands immediate attention from the C-suite.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We're looking at 5 key areas. First, the paradigm shift. Second, the Annex I blacklist. Third, the green claim evidence file. Fourth, GAR label specifications. And finally, your 2026 compliance action plan.
All right, starting with part 1, the paradigm shift, structural modifications to EU consumer protection laws.
So, environmental and social statements, they're no longer treated as just marketing fluff. They are now legally binding product characteristics. And guys, the clock is already ticking on this. The directive actually entered into force in March 2024. By March 27, 2026, all EU member states have to transpose this into national law. But the absolute, inflexible deadline that you absolutely must circle on your calendars is September 27, 2026. On that day, strict EU-wide enforcement begins. There are 0 grace periods. There's no grandfathering for existing inventory or packaging that you just want to sell off under the old rules. It's a hard stop. Now, it's really important to understand that EmpCo is not some isolated standalone rule. It surgically modifies 2 massive pillars of existing European law, the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive and the Consumer Rights Directive. By amending these, the EU is completely shifting the burden of proof entirely onto you, the merchant. Every single environmental claim, every social claim regarding labor conditions, and every circularity claim like repairability is now subject to rigorous, intense legal scrutiny.
Moving on to part 2. The Annex I blacklist, entering the danger zone of banned practices.
Okay, if your marketing teams are currently running campaigns using vague terminology, you might honestly need to kill them immediately. We're looking at the complete death of decades-old advertising language here. The old way, slapping terms like eco-friendly, green, or biodegradable onto your packaging, that is now strictly banned if it's generic and lacks immediate context. The new way? You are absolutely prohibited from using these terms unless you can demonstrate recognized, excellent environmental performance relevant to that exact claim. Think officially holding the EU Eco label, for example.
Now, here is one of the most profound macroeconomic shifts of this entire directive. We have to clearly separate actual physical emissions reductions, so your Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, from carbon offsetting. Buying external credits on the voluntary carbon market, like, say, investing in a forest project in another country, is now strictly prohibited as a basis for claiming a specific product is carbon neutral or climate positive. You can definitely still fund those projects at a corporate level as a climate contribution, but you can absolutely no longer use them to neutralize a product's footprint in your marketing. No way.
Well, let's rapid fire through these additions to the Annex I blacklist. And remember, these are per se prohibitions. That means they are banned in all circumstances with no case-by-case assessment needed by authorities at all. You cannot use self-created sustainability logos that aren't backed by independent third-party certification. You cannot commit what's called scope falsification, like saying a whole product is made of recycled materials when actually only the secondary packaging is. You cannot hide how a software update will slow down a device, and you certainly cannot use digital alerts to induce consumers to replace consumables like ink cartridges prematurely. All right, part 3. The green claim evidence file, the new gold standard for corporate survival. So how on earth do we adapt to this blacklist? Well, by building new internal infrastructure. Notice the sheer density and rigor required for compliance here. Your compliance and marketing departments must now document every single claim before it ever goes public. You need a unique claim ID, exact phrasing, the specific SKU it applies to, and hardcore evidence like peer-reviewed lifecycle assessment data. You also need to find metrics, a baseline year, and sign off from an independent third-party reviewer. Essentially, if an environmental claim isn't backed by a file that looks exactly like this, it shouldn't be leaving your marketing department, period.
And you know, this standard of evidence also applies when we talk about future commitments. Making a claim like net zero by 2040 or 100% circular by 2035 used to be easy PR. Now, it's illegal unless you follow a strict four-step verification process. You must have a publicly available, detailed implementation plan. You must have measurable, time-bound intermediate targets. You've got to show concrete budgetary resources allocated to achieve it. And, critically, it must be regularly audited by an independent third-party expert whose findings are made public.
Let's move to Part 4, Garin Label Specifications, Draconian Design Mandates under Regulation 2025/1960. We are now zooming into some hyper-specific operational details. If you offer a free commercial guarantee of durability that's longer than the standard 2-year legal requirement, you must use the harmonized Garin label. And the regulation here is incredibly rigid. Literally, even graphic design is now a legal compliance issue. You must use the exact title Garin. Your designers must exclusively use the interfont. They have to use exact hex codes, Pantone Reflex Blue C and Pantone Yellow C. The label must contain a QR code redirecting to the official commission portal, not your own website, by the way. And for e-commerce UX, you are allowed a nested display, but it has to expand instantly upon a mouse rollover or a tap. Any deviation from this is a compliance violation.
Finally, Part 5, the 2026 Compliance Action Plan, Strategic Deployment for Communication Departments.
To wrap up this explainer, here is your immediate tactical countdown and operational checklist. First, audit and rewrite all active B2C marketing claims immediately. Seriously, scrub out those generic terms. Second, look at your supply chain. You must enforce strict life cycle assessment data requirements on your B2B vendors. Because think about it, if a supplier lies to you and you print it on your box, you hold the liability. Third, establish a claims governance system where your legal, sustainability, and marketing teams operate under joint approval flows. And fourth, get those UI and UX updates for the Garin label into your development pipeline well ahead of that September 2026 deadline.
Which leaves us with this final critical thought. The era of self-regulation is totally over. The standard of proof is now scientific, and it's heavily audited. So look at your current operations and ask yourself, is your supply chain data truly ready for 2026? Or is your current marketing simply a 4% liability waiting to happen? It is time to build the architecture of evidence. Thank you so much for joining this executive briefing.